Coming to you live today on the dangerous edge of multiple constitutional crises. In 1982, a deliberately poisoned batch of Tylenol killed 7 people, 7, in the Chicago area and surrounding environment. The full weight of federal law enforcement was unleashed to find the source and stem the flow of poison. Some of us who were here today may have been children, but we do have vague memories of the occasion. But now, in an updated version, in 2022, fentanyl killed an average of 200 people a day in 2022, including one of my closest friends. We know the source of the poison, and the full weight of federal law enforcement is being sent to stop Texas from stemming the flow. I mean, why would Texas need to intervene? Clearly, it's just like Mayorkas said, head of Department of Homeland Security. Clearly the border is totally under control. It was the final order of the party. You knew I was going to get an Orwell quote in here somewhere. It was the final order of the party that you deny the evidence of your own eyes and ears. Yes, the border is totally under control. No, the border is not open. Yes, it is totally secure. Yes, we are doing the best that we can. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, a man with whom I have numerous ideological and political problems, let me be abundantly clear on that, decided that he would not ignore the evidence of his eyes, his ears, and the experience of Texas law enforcement officers and Texas citizens. So he stepped up with Operation Lone Star. He did what the federal government refused to do. He lined an entire strip, seized private property, floated buoys wrapped in razor wire into the middle of the Rio Grande, and militarized the entire section of border that he had just seized. The federal government told him to stand down. How dare you get in there and enforce the laws that we are refusing to enforce? It is our constitutional province to enforce them, or apparently not. Abbott wouldn't hear it. Texas would not back down. Instead, they doubled up the rows of shipping containers and razor wire. This is what we all know needs to be done across the full width and breadth of the southern border. Every one of us knows it, even the people who vehemently oppose it. Look at that, I'm a poet and didn't realize it. Anyway, this is important stuff. Abbott took the initiative. Texas took the initiative. And what did the federal government do? They doubled down. They came in and thumped their chest and made all kinds of threats, and we're going to get in there and we're going to cut that razor wire. And they thought that they would actually be able to federalize the National Guard units. There were cries for them to do just that, to take the National Guard units in Texas and Texas' own state guard away from them and federalize it. And then this happened. 25 states got behind Texas. And the regime, not Biden, the regime, his handlers, found themselves utterly powerless. It's one thing to federalize the National Guard units of one state. To try to federalize the National Guard units of 25 states? Ponder that for a minute. As Tom Holleby said, I'm very surprised that many people thought that the National Guard was under the control of the federal government. They are, in fact, not, but can be federalized in times of emergencies. The last time that happened was during the quote-unquote civil rights era. This is a much bigger emergency, but the opposition to federalization is 25 times the size. But again, this is all being done under a state of constitutional crisis. Speaking of which, Kari Lake. I adore the woman personally. I think she's got more balls than most men in the party. She had been claiming for a long time that people were attempting to bribe her to stay out of the race. Now, she's made a lot of claims. She made claims, which of course the news media called baseless, about the Arizona election being stolen. Again, ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. You can do your own digging on that. We know what the official narrative is, and we know what actually happened. But everybody said she was lying. She's just grandstanding until she released the tape this week. That gentleman on the left, that party shill on the left, that servant of the deep state on the left is a certain Mr. DeWitt, head of the Republican Party in Arizona. She recorded a number of conversations with that man, including one that was released this week in which he outright tried to bribe her, saying that he was representing interests, and I quote, back east, to keep her out of the race. She released the tape. He came out the next morning saying that it was quoted out of context, and of course the mainstream media jumped right in line, towed the line, made it the official narrative. It was quoted out of context. It was selectively edited. I've listened to the entire thing, by the way, 15 plus minutes. There was no selective editing at work. But Kerry called his bluff. Kerry said, you either step down from your position, because he's trying to bribe her out of hers. She said, okay, we're going to play this game. We're going to make this a dick-wagging contest. And she whipped out her equipment, and it was ponderous. Slapping her on both kneecaps in front of Mr. DeWitt, who took his little tiny PP, tucked it between his legs with his tail, and went back home. He came out swinging like he was going to fight it until she said, you either step down or I will release the rest of the recordings that I have. Now, eventually, we're all going to be part and parcel to those recordings, and we all know it. But this is all in the name of saving democracy, right? We have to keep this man. And of course, this was a part of this. The final death knell for this gentleman, who, by the way, has won the first two Republican primaries handily. The deep state doesn't quite know what to do. They are struggling, and several states are still passing lawsuits without the benefit of due process to keep this man off the ballot. We are told that it is done in the name of saving democracy. I mean, democracy, like this kind of democracy, that's what we're sending 150 billion taxpayer dollars overseas for, right? To represent democracy. Well, in fact, it is exactly that kind of democracy that they wish to preserve. You see, a month ago, that little coked up clown shoe, no, the one on the left, Volodymyr Zelensky, publicly stated that while they are under attack, this is not the time for elections. He's already taken control of the entire media in the state of Ukraine. He's already outlawed all opposition parties. And now he's suspending elections. And why wouldn't he suspend elections? Because clearly he is running behind. Now, take a look at this graphic. Zelensky on the right, Zelensky on the left, Biden on the right. Take a look at this. Zelensky in trouble. Larry way ahead of him in the polls. Can you think of a rough analog of what's going on here in the United States, say with this guy on the right and Biden on the left, which would be a reason to suspend elections? But again, we're doing it all in the name of saving democracy. That same democracy, by the way, that is sending troops into Orthodox churches in Ukraine, seizing pastors, and putting them under house arrest, if not actual arrest, beating, torturing, incarcerating. Why? Because a church, wait for it, doesn't support the war. A church doesn't support a dictatorship. A church doesn't support an oligarchy. See, their kingdom is somewhere beyond. But again, it's all being done to preserve democracy. You bet it is. It's all being done to preserve democracy. this kind of democracy, this kind of democracy, this kind of democracy is exactly what they're trying to preserve. Now, getting back to the original topic at hand and what's going on at the Texas border and how that all figures into this, well, people think that there could be an emergency. People think that in the same way that Zelensky suspends elections under the principle of we're at war, that the coked up clown shoe on the right, that aging cadaver, would suspend elections here on the basis of a civil war. I don't happen to be of that opinion. But we do need to take into account the full width and breadth of the situation. The people who shriek that Trump will seize the military to use against his enemies are demanding that Biden federalize state forces to crush Texan resistance. Demanding. The people who shriek about saving democracy are demanding that you not even be allowed to vote for the front-running candidate. Are you starting to figure this out yet? I think I've got it figured out. I do not believe that Texas will be a flashpoint to send us into that crisis, to send us into a civil war. I do not believe that will happen, but I do believe Texas and all of the issues surrounding these constitutional crises should be a flashpoint for each and every one of us to decide which people to keep in our lives and our orbits. It's one thing to go along and get along. It's one thing to respectfully disagree. But when it comes to the point where it's time to cut nuts, people have to choose sides. Choose carefully. Choose carefully. Because the stakes are very, very high. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors. And I cannot stress this enough, seeing as how we're 1 week away from me having another one. Certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They're guaranteed to stretch open that come catcher maw and choke you with a big, fat, and if necessary, unwanted dose of the truth cock. Welcome back, boys and girls. After a week's vacation, we are back for the Sunday sermon. Got a lot to cover, but it's going to move quickly today. Appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you guys having patience with me being gone last week. It's personal things I had to take care of. Right now, everybody in for the drum roll. Going to get that roll call. Hopefully the sound issues are resolved, man. I went through several test videos before we even decided to roll with the sermon today, and it kept causing problems. Finally, I had to shut down everything, unplug everything, plug everything back in, and start from scratch, and I think we finally got it resolved. I'm about to find out when I do this. Here we go. Yeah, we got some folks here with the, yep, right out of the starting gate. I like it. Of course, Brother Roman and his lovely wife, Carrie, from opiumtales.com. The mighty Dennis Weimer. Good to see you, brother. Bill Wayne, my brother in Christ, man. Good to see you. By the way, tearing into that book. Brother, you, so many things. Got my head spun up right now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, man. Keep that mind active. You keep the soul active. You keep the spirit active. You keep me focused, brother, and I love that. I really, really love it. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Speaking of members of the Bratva, and if you know, you know, Brother Clem, remain calm, breathe. I'm learning, bro. And I'm getting much more comfortable with that, man. George Williams, you made it right on, man. And by the way, I got to thank you, George. Every one of your posts out there, man, everyone that comes across my feed, just, it lines me out because I realize that I'm not that lone voice out there in the wilderness, man. I really respect the strength of your faith. I really respect everything that you do. And I really, really appreciate you being on board, man. And don't worry, if there's ever some days you can't make it, I don't take it personally, bro, because I know you're out there and I know we're all connected. Just like Bill, just like Clem, we're out there, kindred spirits, like minds. Speaking of like minds and kindred spirits, Deacon Mark. Yeah, the official story can be whatever it needs to, but here it's Deacon Mark. On the porch in Jacksonville, Texas. Happy to have you on board. The original Sinner Sister herself, Miss Emily on board. G-Dub, making it early. Please don't tease me with Texas secession porn. It doesn't matter how you spelled it. I knew where you were headed with that, man. How long have I known you? G-Dub, man. Hey, it's good. How's it? And by the way, man, hit my inbox. Let me know how things are going over there in Alaska. You know, G-Dub and I both kind of had an unspoken, because here's the thing. We're not, we're both denizens of the Northwest now. G-Dub way further Northwest than I am even now. But we both have that Lone Star in our blood. You can't live in Texas for any length of time and not get Lone Star in your blood, man. I was down there for 26 years. And I have a very love-hate relationship with Houston. I have a love-hate relationship with Texas, but that Lone Star gets in your blood, man. And should the day come, I will gladly bleed and die for the Lone Star. And I say that absolutely without equivocation. I don't think we're there. I think we're dipping our toe in the pond, but I don't think we're there yet. I will tell you that. Freezing my nuts off over here, kind of thinking of going home before next winter. Don't do it, bro. Solidarity, man. Solidarity. Texan first, American second. Will not apologize for saying that. And bro, you shouldn't apologize for saying that. Miss Emmy, Texas is a state of mind. Brother Sonny, who I know is eventually going to show up, probably right after I start bragging on him. He'll tell you too, man. And of course, Deacon Mark say the same thing. All of my boys down in Texas. I love the Lone Star. There are a lot of things I cannot live with. You know what I mean? I consider myself a Texan in self-imposed exile. That's pretty much where it's at, if I really had to define it. We're going to go ahead and dial down the bumper music a little bit. And it's funny because I'm dancing along with the music, and I don't even know if you guys can hear it, man. We've had some sound issues 6 ways from Sunday, and I really don't even know anymore, man. I'm going to fade it out. Before I do that, just a reminder, the bumper music, gut-stomping rock and roll band called Red Desert out of the smoldering ruins and embers of the once great American city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. Every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. I have got two-fisted caffeine consumption. I got my battle bottle with my rock and roll lemonade, and I had a little bit of coffee going on from Wake Up Call, a little local place up here in the Spoke. So I will, at the very least, have the energy to get through this damn thing. I don't know if I'll have the tenacity. I don't know if I'll have the verbal acumen to really make the most of it. We're going to do whatever we can here. Again, just working through sound issues and stuff. It's just me, man. I mean, that is the thing about this. I don't have the benefit of a lot of these guys that are content creators who at least have one other guy that they do a bond rip with, like right before they launch their podcast, dude. I don't have the benefit of that. I don't have, it's always been just me from the very start of this thing when it literally was nothing. And one of the reasons why, people ask me all the time, why don't you shoot with a head-on camera view? And eventually one day I may get to that, but I kind of like doing this because this reminds me of where we came from. And where we came from was just me with a phone. And it's funny because I still have this here. This is what I called my little phone piggy, right? It's a little piggy, right? And it's got the flat suction cup, and I would put the suction cup on the back of the cell phone and just kind of prop it up facing me, down here at this angle. That's how we got started. That's how we ran for years, man. And now that the mighty Stone, by the way, Brother Stone, if you're out there, sorry I missed you in the roll call. But Stone was cool enough to get a webcam and a really nice microphone for me. And I knew that it wasn't a problem with the mic. I figured it was anyway. We got it fixed apparently, so it's good. Um, but I like this. It just kind of reminds me where maybe one day, if I get to a point financially where this is more than like a labor of love, I'll be able to bring somebody in here and we can get caffeinated, and I'll have a guy running the soundboard and all kinds of other stuff. But in the meantime, it's just me. When I'm out on the road, it's just me and my laptop. When I'm here, it's just me and the Mighty Mac, which is like this big Mac Pro tower from like 2007, I think. It's still working. Back when Apple still had its soul, more or less. Anyway. Another rant, man. Another rant. What was that, Emmy? My king came to Texas from Konigsberg, now called Kaliningrad, in 1847 and haven't left. Right on, man. I finally got to the point where I couldn't take it. And I'm not going to bore you guys with like the whole story of me coming to Texas and then leaving Texas. I'm not going to bore you guys with that because it's pointless. But suffice it to say, man, I am looking at what's going on in Texas. We're going to do a much deeper dive on this here in a few minutes. I love the Lone Star, man. I love the Lone Star. Being up here in the Northwest, I have to be honest, and my Texas friends are not going to like it, but I do notice that every one of my Texan friends that come up here and actually visit me up here, and I show them around. I take them across into Idaho, Montana, take them to the other side of the state where all the freaks live, but at least, and then like the Oregon coast, and I show, and they're like, okay, dude, we get it. There's some things that I will never be able to say with a straight face living up here in the Northwest. No disrespect to Texas, man, but you guys are really, really proud of those piney woods in East Texas. Yeah. Cool story, bro. Let me take you on a walk through a Pacific Northwest evergreen rainforest. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. California's more beautiful too, man. But you can't, it's tough. I'm thankful that I'm on the east side of the state that is more red state blue collar, because I could not live in Seattle or Portland. But anyway, yeah, Texans are real proud of the piney woods of East Texas. And I'm like, all right, dude. You get out into San Antonio or Austin and you're in the hill country. I'm just like, hill country. Okay, come pay me a visit. San Antonio, really cool. Hey, remember the Alamo, especially going into what we're going into. I really dig San Antonio as a city, but when I hear how cool y'all's Riverwalk is, I'm like, dude, we got a hydroelectric dam downtown that was built in 1890 that still powers 6,000 homes. And it's this huge thundering waterfall. And but tell me again about your Riverwalk. Cool story, bro. But I still love Texas. It's not that simple, man. And it really is. Emmy nailed it. It's a state of mind, man. Once you live in the Lone Star for any length of time, that gets up in you. Because Texas really is its own country. As cliched as that is, it's the truth, man. It's its own nation. It's its own, with its own history and its own pride and its own really, really wonderful things that will endear it to you. So there's that. What is that? We're eating Nolan. Yeah, Nolan Ryan steaks right now. That's very Texan, brother. Very Texan. Mexican food up here sucks, and there's no Whataburger. Yeah, I feel that, G-Dub, here in Washington as well. We had, we have a few pathetic attempts at Mexican food. I will say this, though. No, because I got to be fair. You get over to like Wenatchee, right, and Yakima, you will find some really badass Mexican food in the state of Washington, because that's where all the Mexicans are, is Wenatchee, working the orchards and heading up that way through the canyon country along Columbia River Gorge, and of course Yakima. So you will find some legit, man. I found, oh my God, this one place. It was just a truck, man. It was just a food truck in Wenatchee when I was running railroad crews for BNSF. And, I would trip through, and I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. It's probably going to be some substandard stuff, man. But I got a face full of that. And I was like, and it became a regular stop. North Texas Mexican food is pretty bad too. Agreed. Godshaw. What's up? All right. Brother, Doug, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Glad you made it. And again, guys, I'm not really big on punctuality because you guys know that I rant and rave usually for about the first 10 minutes before I even give a sponsor shout out. So let me get into that. Roman, one of my oldest and dearest friends, and of course his lovely wife Carrie and Allie and Roxy and the bevy of beautiful women that have now become so numerous I can't even remember all of their names, over at, and check it out, opiumtales.com. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. Roman is doing some beautiful watercolor work with some very, very beautiful naked women, and his book is out. Look for Roman Riva as Riva, R-I-V-A, as the author. You can find it on Amazon, From Dork to Pimp Daddy. It details his whole journey from being just an ordinary dude, an ordinary nondescript kind of dude, to actually having gorgeous naked women pay this man for the privilege of painting them. Well, painting portraits of them. I mean, whether or not he actually paints on them, that's something between him and the models. I don't get into that. But here we go. Oh, we got a whole list of them. Right on. 2 states, 2 nations. Diana is in Romania. So, dude, you are an international pimp daddy now. How about that? That is pretty legit. Welcome, Godshaw. Y'all like this guy? Trust me. I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm glad you're here. And if you're coming recommended from G-Dub, he's a fairly good judge of character. He hasn't always been a really great judge of foreign policy, but that's a fight that we hashed out a long time ago, and we're past it. Sorry, G-Dub. You know I had to, man. Anyway, sponsor shout out number 2, my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison. Dusty, the pitmaster over at Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest, period, end of statement, done. What about sit down, shut up, you're wrong, Nordic Smoke? They are going to be back out rolling with the Viking Longship, the big smoker trailer. I will keep you guys updated on that. Check them out on all the social media. They're on Instagram. They're on Facebook. Nordic Smoke Barbecue. They were featured on an episode of Guy Fieri, whatever, the 3D diners, drive-ins, and dives. I'm not a foodie, so I don't know much about that, but I do know that they were featured. Guy Fieri is the guy with like the weird hair or whatever, but they were featured on an episode of that. Nordic Smoke Barbecue, only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Check them out. Very dear friends of mine and very hardcore supporters of the program. Everybody is showing up based on G-Dub's recommendation. Man, that is fantastic. Long Nose Pete. Okay, Long Nose Pete, very clever. I see what you did there. I'm looking at your avatar with the big, okay, Long Nose Pete. Very clever, man. Very clever. I dig it. Now I'm going to bounce up here to Godshaw's avatar real quick. I can't even really make that out, man, because I got old guy eyes, but I will assume if you guys were sent by Mr. G-Dub, I'm going to assume that I am in good company. All right, guys, let's get underway here. You already know where we're going first, boys and girls. It is everyone's favorite segment, Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Let me see if we can get the crowd cheering sound effect. Everybody hear that? Everybody hear the crowd cheering, or am I just waving at imaginary people? Well, obviously I'm waving at imaginary people, but thunderous roar of applause from the crowd. Hoping my soundboard's working here. I can hear it on my end. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but yes. Ryan's Rabbit Hole, man. Very popular segment. You guys know Ryan. He is my brother. He is my brother in blood. He is my brother of the hook. He is my brother in every sense of the word. I love him like my own flesh and blood. He's a fantastic human being. He opened the door for me in my journey as a crane operator. He has been a dear friend, and we go way back. We've got stories that go all the way back to like the early 90s. And now that the statute of limitations has run out on most of it, we can actually tell some of them. One of the things that we bonded over early on is the fact that we are both repositories of useless information. We are murder to play a game of Trivial Pursuit with, because between our two brains and all the obscure stuff that our heads are taken up with, we know a little something about everything. And that is the segment of the rabbit hole. Sometimes the rabbit hole dovetails with what we're discussing on the sermon. Sometimes it does not. But regardless, It's designed to take you a little out of your comfort zone, expose you to something to which you might not have previously been aware. You see that? I'm trying to do the grammatically correct thing. Something to which you may not have previously been aware. Sometimes it is an obscure historical figure. Sometimes it is a historical event that is largely overlooked. Sometimes it's some weird esoteric and conspiratorial stuff. When it does get into the esoteric and obscure, that's when Ryan really makes me work for it. He kind of gave me a break this week after really. Have I stopped talking for a while? What happened? I'm not sure what's going on there, but if that is an audio problem, somebody hit me to it really quick. Sound is damn good tonight. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, looks like we're back. Don't know if it's us or you. Okay, cool. Right. Whew. All right. Thank you, Jesus. All right, we're gonna roll with it. This week, after making me really, really work for it for the past 2 weeks, he gave me something that is a little more in my wheelhouse. And I think you guys are going to enjoy it. How many of you guys are familiar with the work of Graham Hancock? Graham Hancock has been featured on the Joe Rogan podcast. He had a short-running series, I believe, on Netflix. He does a lot of stuff with hidden histories, lost civilizations, parts of the history of the human experience that have been buried under ice flows or flooded out or, ground into dust by glaciers and stuff, but have a habit of reemerging. This week, Graham Hancock is going to be one of your search terms because I want you to look into his work. But there's one in particular, Derinkuyu. Derinkuyu. Let me go ahead and spell that for you. This is in Turkey. It's Derinkuyu. Derinkuyu. There is some dispute as to how old Derinkuyu is. And there's also some dispute about why it was abandoned. Let me tell you what it is first, okay? This is in Turkey. And there were some people who were doing building renovations. They knocked down a basement wall and they found an underground passage. And they went down this underground passage and it was considerably deeper than anybody would have thought. And then they found that passage led to other passages. And so they got some archaeologists and some college professors down there. They started doing some basic exploration and excavation. And what they found was a city, an entire city, capable of housing estimated up to 20,000 people that had been dug straight into the earth. An underground city dating back to before the 7th century, dating back potentially to the 1st or 2nd century AD. Now, best estimates are that this underground city, and it had ventilation. You're talking about people with basic concepts of tools. This is not modern excavation practices. These people had hand tools. These people did not have, balances and levels and power tools and underground and lighting. They were having to work off a torchlight. And what does torchlight need? Torchlight needs oxygen. So they've got to have ventilation pipes go into the surface, and they've got to dig those out, and they've got to align everything, and they don't have laser levels and computers to dig. This was all done by hand. Right? In the 1st or 2nd century. And Graham Hancock says even longer ago. Okay? Again, there's some dispute. But Derinkuyu was an entire underground city. There were food storage chambers in this underground city. There were places of worship, primitive though they were, in this underground city. Again, ventilation pipes going all the way to the surface from hundreds of feet underground. There were sources of water, wellheads, down, buried deep beneath the earth. An entire city constructed beneath the earth. So the question is, why? And that's going to be your part of the rabbit hole. There are 1,000,001 theories on that, okay? Graham Hancock has his own. You can still tour this city. By the way, there are some chambers. Here's another thing. Rolling Stone, not Keith Richards, take the needle out of your neck. There were rolling stones chiseled down there that were rolled into their own chambers off of hallways that could be rolled into place to block off entire sections of this underground city. So why, in a relatively temperate region, would a civilization find itself compelled to dig an underground city? Not a root cellar, not a storm shelter, a city. A thriving city underground capable of housing 20,000 people. One of the theories that gets circulated is that there was something worth hiding from. And I believe, in my heart of hearts, this is my take on Derinkuyu and why it was put together and what the people were doing, is that there was something on the surface worth hiding from. Whether that was some sort of plague or whether that was some sort of impending event, if they had scientists who were advanced enough to predict some massive catastrophe. Maybe it was a series of storms that kept hammering down, a series of floods that kept hammering down, or some mysterious enemy. Now, it would seem that if they were running from something, there would be some record as to what they were running from. But currently, none exists. There are a lot of levels that this works on. Basically, what I'm getting at is we like to think, particularly the experts, the trust the science types, that history is settled. We know, and I'm really trying to get my language under control here, but so I'll use some filter words. We know precisely squat about when it comes to this. There are so many things that we would like to think ourselves enlightened on, but we don't know. We don't have a good answer. Even the experts, even the science doesn't have a good answer. Now, that doesn't mean we disregard everything that we know and turn into flat earth morons. We don't do that. Okay. There's some stuff that we can be reasonably confident about, but there's some stuff for which science nor history offers any good explanation. Derinkuyu, along with a number of other lost civilizations, which is why I also want you to look up Graham Hancock and follow his work. In the same way that I'd want you to follow the work of Zecharia Sitchin and all the stuff that he did. No matter what you believe about aliens, no matter what you believe about advanced civil, any of that, it's worth rolling around. It's always worth rolling around. Understand that sometimes when you roll those things around, it's basically intellectual masturbation. Okay? But some of these things that can lead you to deeper conclusions. Some of these things that can lead you to speculate. Because if we don't know, we know that history repeats itself, right? If there is a part of history that we don't know about, guess what? That's going to repeat itself too. Okay? So, say for instance, right, George, giants walking the earth, right? The scripture talks about the Nephilim, right? All of these things are possibilities. No matter what you believe on a spiritual level, no matter what you believe on a historical level, you have to entertain possibilities. Because, let's say, that particular theory of Derinkuyu, they were hiding from some major catastrophe or some enemy that we can't account for, maybe something of an extraterrestrial sort, maybe something of an extra-dimensional sort. We can't say because there's no record. But bet your ass that whatever they were hiding from, that part of history is going to repeat itself again. Whether it's a climate cycle, whether it's a history cycle, whether it's an invading army cycle, whether it's visiting from other planets cycle. So it's worth looking into. And that is the purpose of the rabbit hole, to take you a little out of the mundane, to take you a little out of the ordinary everyday stuff, give you a little peek into something that maybe you hadn't contemplated before. So that is the rabbit hole for this week. Derinkuyu, the lost city, the lost underground city of Derinkuyu. And I want you to look into Graham Hancock because he is the guy that's done the most work on the subject and a ton of other subjects, lost civilizations, parts of history that have been forgotten or neglected. Graham Hancock and the Lost Underground City of Darren Kuyu. That is Ryan's rabbit hole for the week, and we are happy to be back on board. Right on, right on. Let me go ahead. I'm going to put the little trailer down there. That's the rest of my social media presence in that little thing scrolling across the bottom. I also do want to refer you guys to my Substack, reverendbart.substack.com. Here is the thing. I'm going forward, guys. I'm going to be, and I know you've heard me say this before, but we're really into crunch time now. I'm going to be a lot less active on regular social media. Partly because of personal evolution, partly because I'm tired of throwing this stuff out for free, man. I'm tired of casting pearls before swine. I'm tired of offering all of these things to try to reach people to either elevate their consciousness or warn them what the hell is coming, and they're off in Kardashian land. They're off following the ball game. I'm done, or they want to push back with their stupid stuff because they've already adopted their narrative. They've already outsourced their thinking to that Mad Owl guy, and they're not interested. Okay, cool. Well, then I'm not going to bother you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to become a lot more active on Substack, where if you want it, you're really going to have to work for it. And that's okay, because it's still free. By the way, my Substack is still free. If you guys have not subscribed over there, please, man, jump in. The other cool thing about Substack is, just like on regular social media, you can do reposts, right? And I do repost a lot of stuff on social media now. And again, pearls before swine, and it's fallen on deaf ears. Why bother? On Substack, you can what they call restack. So I can not only give you guys my input, but I can turn you guys on to other folks from whom I draw a lot of comfort and wisdom and knowledge, and say, hey, man, these guys have served me well. They are worth giving a read to, and I can restack their articles. Guys like Alex Berenson, who did probably better work than anyone on the fake ass pandemic. Guys like Matt Taibbi, to whom were given the Twitter files, and who has just blown things open about big tech's collaboration with the United States government. Guys like Taibbi, guys like Berenson, guys, Ann Coulter, all right? You can take or leave Annie, but she's at least thought-provoking, okay? Robert Malone, another doctor who was on the cutting edge of the fake pandemic stuff. There are a lot of authors over there, and the beauty of Substack is they don't censor. They don't censor. And as a result of that, they are catching flack, just like my boy Elon over at X. They're catching flack because they won't respond to being bullied, right? You guys are Nazis, and we don't like what you're saying, and you shut it down, and we'll go somewhere else. All right. Bye. When you look at Greenwald, okay, Glenn Greenwald, you can say what you want about Greenwald, and I don't have a whole lot of good things to say about Glenn Greenwald as a person. I think he is a hard leftist. What I will say is that he is coming from a place of honesty. He is the guy that wrote the Edward Snowden story. He is over on Substack. Barry Weiss wasn't hardcore left enough, and they pushed her out over at the New York Times. She is on Substack. Taibbi, same basic thing. So I decided I'd throw my hat in the ring over there. I will offer the stuff that I am writing, and I will restack the guys that I respect. It's worth, like right now, mine is free. Not everybody's over there is free. You might have to spend a couple of bucks a month, like less than I spent on this cup of coffee. You guys might have to spend that a month for somebody who's really going to change your perspective on stuff. That is the new wave of journalism. The spoon-fed stuff is going to be good enough for the herd animals. But if you want to dig deeper, you're going to have to go to places like Substack. You're going to have to go to alternative media. You're going to have to entertain the bevy of idiots over at X to get to the few really good voices over at X. People who want it are going to have to work for it. And the fact that you guys are here and you're entertaining a different perspective from a fat, toothless cripple, crane operator with some opinions, shows that you're at least willing to open that thought process. So thank you for that. Anyway, guys, Ryan's Rabbit Hole, and that is my Substack right there. Reverend Bart at Substack.com. We'll go ahead and take that off. There we go. And we're back. And by the way, if you guys are wondering about that little dollar store Alex Jones, somebody threw that out at me on Twitter and Instagram as an insult, and I thought it was probably one of the highest compliments I'd ever been paid. We're gonna get to the new hashtags later. Let me see where we're at, Pete. It's does Substack have an app or just a website? Oh, thanks, Pete. I'm glad. Yes, Substack, they do have an app, but you can just go to the website, just substack.com. You can go and you can look. And thanks for asking the question, man. I appreciate that. Yep, Robert Malone was banned from social media. He's on Substack. Taibbi was blackballed. He's on Substack. It's where people go because we know that the mainstream media is... You can't use the word controlled, man. It makes it sound like a conspiracy theory, dude. No, it's pattern recognition. It's being able to not ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. They're totally controlled. Corporate, government, or otherwise, they're totally controlled. The only place you can go to there, and you've heard me bring this up before, I have friends that survived the Soviet era in Russia, okay? And what they have told me is, one of the things that they have told me is if there was one good thing about living under Soviet rule is that you knew that anything that came through a newspaper, a television, or a radio was spoon-fed propaganda. You knew. There were no illusions about it. You knew that you were not getting objective information. The problem with Americans is they were under this illusion that their information, the people that they trusted for so very long, they're still stuck in Walter Cronkiteville, right? And Cronkite was a shill as well. Dan Rather, all of those guys have been shills all along, but we were under the impression that we were getting, not those of us who think, but the majority of people were under the impression they were getting objective information that was presented to them without bias, that was presented to them without narrative, without intent, right? And as a result, they spent a long time trusting people that should not have ever been trusted. Now, a whole lot of people are shaking off the fence. Too little, too late, remains to be seen. Okay, let's jump into this, shall we? Butchers, bribes, and bluffs. Let's get into it. Butchers, let's talk about Volodymyr Zelensky. Yeah, he's in a hell of a lot of trouble right now. He's in a hell of a lot of trouble because his financial benefactors have completely abandoned him. He showed up at the World Economic Forum thinking that he was going to be the darling of it like he had been for the last 2 years, and he quickly realized the same thing that Saddam Hussein realized, the same thing that leaders of the Philippines, the Marcos family in the Philippines realized during the 1980s, is that the United States will use you, right? The United States deep state will use you to serve their ends. And when they are done, you are persona non grata. You get no more feed from the trough. No one is helping you out. All of the people in Europe right now, and this is another thing I meant to cover during the opener and did not get to, there are demonstrations in Europe, all over Europe right now. It was the Dutch several months ago. Now the French and the Germans, farmers, because of all these new deep state, these EU regulations. And when I say deep state, we're talking about deep state is more United States thing, but it's all part of a globalist agenda, right? The EU has their own deep state apparatus, okay? But it's all looking after globalist interests. And all of these environmental regulations are designed to freaking limit that production. None of these things are being placed on our adversaries like, communist China, right? We signed back on to the Paris Accords, even though we were the only nation in the Paris Accords to actually reduce our carbon footprint, even when we weren't part of the Paris Accords. The regime signed us back onto the Paris Accords, which limits all of the Western interest, all the interest in the West, while continuing to allow communist China to build coal plants. Are you starting to figure this out yet? Okay, we're going to keep coming back to that. Butchers, Zelensky, he's in trouble. His sugar daddies are no longer willing to kick down money for his coke habit, which is a nice way of saying he is a whore to the globalists, and they are no longer willing to support his blood habit. But what's disturbing to look at with that, as I mentioned during the opener, is the implications that it has here. The American left is very fond of using the word democracy. We have to save democracy. This is an existential threat to our democracy. What about our democracy? First of all, we have never lived in a democracy. Thank God, we have never lived in a democracy. Our founders warned us about it. What was it Ben Franklin said? Democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting over what's for dinner. And then somebody else added, and the Second Amendment is a well-armed sheep contesting the vote. In any case, right? China doesn't have to reduce shit until at least 2030. It's almost like they want this. Yeah, isn't that funny? Funny how that works. Zelensky's done. Here's what we're going to find out, too, going into the election season. That's why there are so many factors on the line. Guys, you're going to have to pay attention. And again, off the strength of my faith and off the confidence in my preparations, I don't fear any of this. I don't fear any of this. Perhaps you do not share my faith, and that is entirely fine, right? But I know the boss man's got me. Boss man's got me, carpenter kid laying the path. I'm good. Now, if you are not a person of faith, if you are on a secular path, you have to establish confidence in yourself, and that is okay too, and we will show you how to get there. Some of you guys wish you were in better shape. You guys know, like every week or other week, I will drop wisdom in your lap about how to get in better shape. It doesn't take much. Remember the directive. It's a joke, but it's more of a parable, right? The two guys that are out camping, right? Two guys are out camping. Bear comes ripping into the campsite, turning over the food, rips into the tent, sticks his face in, right? Two guys in the tent. One guy freaks out, spazzes, loses his mind. He's completely freaking useless. The other guy, real calm, cool, collected. Pulse doesn't go up. Expression doesn't change. He starts putting on his shoes. And the panicky guy looks at him and says, what are you putting on your shoes for? You never outrun the bear. I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you. Words to live by going into tough times, people. You're never going to be able to outrun the bear, right? You're never going to be able to outrun the bear. You just got to outrun the guy behind you, right? And that guy behind you is more often going to be a skeptic. That guy behind you is more often going to be a grazer. And we're going to get into what grazer means here in a little bit for some of you new guys. They're going to be easy to outrun. We'll give you the tips. Just remember that something is always better than nothing 10 times out of 10, and that skills beat tools 10 times out of 10. Not everybody can afford to take the time or spend the money to get really hardcore training really freaking often, but you can do a little bit, right? We are going into those treacherous times right now. All bets are off. We've got things happening on an international scale with that proxy war that we are fighting in Ukraine. We have things happening on an international scale with the Taiwan situation because our cadaver-in-chief is entirely compromised to the Chinese communists. As a result of that, it is affecting his domestic performance here because he's got to account for all those business dealings that he's been swearing that he didn't know about, and his cokehead son showing up in Congress after refusing to show up for a subpoena, just waltzes in like he owns the place. The propaganda ministry cannot cover for this anymore. They've done a phenomenal job. Let's give it to them, guys. Hey, hands together for the propaganda ministry. Let's put it together for them, man. They have done a phenomenal job. Jen Psaki, oh my goodness. You know, I've got a weakness for redheads with big asses, and Jen Psaki was a redhead with a big ass who was one of the most skilled liars on the planet. And watching her spin things and lie with such relative ease, it was magical. Party hats, I'm telling you, man. And then they replaced her with a diversity hire. Bad move, Joe. Bad move. I say all that to say this. The narrative is falling apart. You guys are familiar with one of my favorite poems that, you know, the ends are spinning, that ever-widening gyre, and when the ends become polarized enough, the center will no longer hold. The center is falling to pieces. People are getting desperate. Rule out nothing. Simple rule. Rule out nothing. Rule out nothing. Yeah, don't worry, Big Mike will save us. Yeah, that's what they're talking about, right? They're going to put Michelle in. Michael, Big Mikey. Rule out nothing, okay? I would not have thought that people would actively oppose putting the leading candidate. And when I say leading candidate, I don't mean leading GOP candidate. I mean the leading candidate. Every major poll, without exception, right now shows Trump leading not just the other members of his own party, but defeating Biden. So what's the way to preserve democracy? We've got to pull him off the ballot. Wait a minute. Wait. We're going to save democracy by preventing people from voting for the people, for the person that they clearly want. That's how we're going to save democracy. Ponder that. We went over that in the opener. Rule out nothing. They will try legal tactics. They will try to get him off the ballot. At the very end, I would expect to see, because everybody's waiting for Texas to secede over this border thing. That's not going to happen. But one of the things that they did game out back in 2020 when they thought they were going to lose was the entire West Coast seceding. Podesta went in and played the role. Podesta went in and played the role when they gamed that simulation out. He played the role of Biden. And what would happen if Trump won a decisive victory, and they were not going to let him have it. They were going to encourage the entire Western three states, California, Washington, Oregon, to secede from the Union. Don't rule any of this out. Is it likely to happen? Should we be like, oh my God, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, the sky is falling? No, because then you're the guy in the tent who's just freaking out. You need to be the guy who's just calmly putting your shoes on. But understand the position that we're in. At the very least, God, if you are listening, they will give him a JFK haircut. What is a JFK haircut? That's where they part the hair, because he's got that part, but they take the part and they move it back and to the left, back and to the left. Am I saying what I sound like I'm saying? That's exactly what I'm saying. Do I think that is likely? No. Do I rule it out for these people? No, I do not. They're very desperate. They are very desperate. And democracy, for all their lip service, is the last thing on their mind. These people have always been totalitarians at heart. They always have been bitter, evil, pinched faces. Terrible. Just terrible, bitter, damaged people. But it really didn't start showing up until 2016. And then they took the masks off. And everything that I had said for years about and up until 2016, I really didn't do sides. I considered myself a Ron Paul libertarian. And I still don't think that I have moved that much to the right. I feel like the Overton window has shifted around me. But again, I'm getting off on a tangent, trying not to do that right now. Here's the situation. Rule out nothing. Rule out nothing. You guys remember that scene from Seven, right? Where they're washing their hands in the police station, and they're getting ready to go out with John Doe and see what he has in store for him out here. And he said, man, if we get out there and John Doe's head opens up and an alien pops out, I want you to have expected it. That's where we need to be, boys. That's where we need to be. You guys tracking? Good. All right, let's get on with it. Yeah, Zelensky is in trouble. Zelensky is in big trouble. And that is going to have its own ramifications, because if you are of the opinion, as I am, that there is kompromat in the old Russian word, if there is compromising material that he has on Hunter or Joe at the Burisma, that's when he's going to throw it out, because he's about to get dusted, man. Suspending elections is not going to work. His own people are turning on him. We all saw that. Let me just run through. This was one of the polls. The trust rating, right? That's the key mayor. And he is, if they actually had elections, he's the guy that's going to be running against Zelensky. He's accusing Zelensky of operating like an autocrat. Wow, whatever would have given you that indication? Oh, the fact that he's going to come out and say, it looks like I'm going to lose, so I'm going to suspend elections. I don't need to belabor the point. You guys, if you follow it, you already know what's going on. That's going to cover butchers. But after we get out of butchers, what do you say we get into bribes? You guys have been following this Kerry Lake thing. And again, this is the longest I've spent on politics here in a bit. And I've been trying desperately to avoid it as much as humanly possible. For obvious reasons. But that came out this week. Again, all of this keeps coming back to the rhetoric and the narrative, which is we have to do this to save democracy. They keep reminding us that Hitler was democratically elected. This is true, okay? But if you did not know, if you were in Germany in the 1930s and Hitler was on his rise to power, would it have been morally correct, not knowing where it was ultimately going to end up, for you to walk up and put a bullet in his head because you thought that it might end up that way? And that's even if you concede the Hitler-Trump comparison, which obviously I do not. The man had 4 years. He had 4 years, and he did none of those things. He did not try to control the press. He did not weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. He did not spy on journalists. Do you notice the theme here? Every one of these grievances that I'm listing are things that the Biden administration has done. And again, draw the distinction between Biden and the regime. That cadaver does not know what planet he's on. His handlers are running it. We've all got our theories about which guy might be the head handler in charge. See what I did there? Boy, that was surfing. We all know. We all know. Right? But Obama, when he was in office, did the same thing. He did spy on journalists. He did up the surveillance state against his political enemies. He did weaponize the IRS against conservatives. And now, in his third term, he's doing it again. All of these things that Trump is being accused of. The left has a major projection problem. Now, you can choose to disagree, but again, we had 4 years to observe Darth Cheeto, all right? And I don't deify the man, as evidenced by the fact that I just called him Darth Cheeto. Darth Cheeto, the return of the Mango Menace. I don't deify the man, but he made a lot of very good calls. He made a lot of correct calls politically and historically. It is the first 4 years of my entire adult life, and I am damn near 55 years old. It is the first 4 years in my life that I lived in a period where not only were we not involved in any new wars, but we actually ended some old ones, one of which dated all the way back to 1950. What? Say what you want about the man. Do I want to cut off his thumbs? Maybe. Please stop tweeting, Mr. President. Is he inarticulate? Is he kind of a buffoon in the way that he communicates with people? Is he a bull in a china shop? Yes, he is. Bull in a china shop, loud, belligerent, doesn't give a shit what other people think. I think it reminds me of someone. Bald fella, missing some teeth. Anyway, it'll come to me. Here's the point. This is where we're at. Everything is on the table. Now, the bribes. Kari Lake. Kari Lake has talked a lot. Kari Lake is very much like Trump in that spot. She will talk herself into a thing where it almost feels like she's painted herself into a corner, right? Barry Soetoro. Hey, Tommy, man, I'm glad you made it, Bubba. Hey, everybody say happy birthday to Tommy right now. Everybody say happy birthday to Tommy. Glad you made it, bro. Glad you made it. Yeah, bro, don't worry about it. We're not really big on punctuality around here. You understand that, bro. It's all good. David, glad you made it back. Right on. Barry Soetoro. Here's the point with the Kari Lake thing. She will talk herself to a point where you think she's backed herself into a corner, and then she will come out with some receipts, and then you're in trouble. Okay. Everybody said that she was lying and just that she was doing a repeat of the Trump playbook when she claimed that the election was stolen in Arizona. All right. First of all, there are many of us out there that think that a reasonable case could be made that the 2020 election for Trump was at the very least rigged, if not outright stolen. But even leaving that to the side for a minute, she came with receipts. She came with the machines that were all failing, and all of those machines were placed specifically in Republican-controlled districts. And the woman who had the final accountability for the vote tally was the candidate running against her. No conflict of interest there. Whether you believe that election was stolen from Kari Lake or not, and I do, for the record, she came with the receipts on the voting machines. She wasn't just talking noise. She's been saying for a long time that people were trying to bribe her to stay out. And everyone was like, yeah, that's Kari. She runs her mouth a lot. And then the tape came out this week. I truly wish that guy had not stepped down. I truly wish DeWitt had not stepped down when that tape emerged. And I want you guys to go, because the first thing they're going to tell you is that the tape was selectively edited. That's what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you that the tape was selectively edited. There is a 15, 16 some odd minute version of it that is the full thing. From the time he walks in the door and you can hear Kari like chewing her food. It was over lunch to the time where he's walking away. And she actually tells him, she was like, why don't you go public with this? I want you guys to go and you know what? I'm not even going to, no spoilers here. I want you guys to listen to it, because that 16 minutes will chill you to the bone about the prospects of the kind of democracy these people are really about protecting and how much they have infiltrated. You know, Bongino is very fond of saying that Republicans are not the solution to your problem, but that Democrats are the cause of all those problems. You can take that or leave it, but here's the point. The first part, Republicans are not the solution to your problem, you will never have a more clear perspective on that than after listening to those 16 minutes. The Mitch McConnells of the world, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, the DeWitts of the world, they are just as much tools of the deep state as anyone else. And when I say deep state, I don't even need to put that in a conspiratorial framework. Because independent of conspiracy, what do we know about history? Money protects money, power protects power. No conspiracy required. This is money and power protecting money and power. Listen to those 16 minutes. It'll chill you. But this is evidence, people. And not a word about it in the mainstream press. The mainstream press tried to make DeWitt look like the victim. She set him up. Oh, right. I mean, how dare she turn on a tape recorder when he's coming in and offering her bribes? She made him offer her a bribe. She was waving a gun around. That's why it was an audio tape and not a video. She had a gun to his head saying, bribe me, mother. No. This is how they spin you up. We're going to do a deep dive. By the way, next week we are going to do a super deep dive on propaganda and mind control. That is what's coming next week for the sermon. Super deep dive on propaganda and mind control. And if for whatever reason we don't wind up doing a sermon next weekend, because there's a possibility, it'll be the following week. The next sermon that we will do, we're going to do a super deep dive on mind control and propaganda. Because people who are close to you understand that when they give you that blank look, their eyes start to glaze over, it's because their minds might not necessarily be their own. Do I mean that there's something sinister about that? No, I mean that it's entirely possible for any of us to fall under that. It's not that difficult to take control of a human mind. It's really, really not. And the science is there to support it. Butchers, bribes. So now we've covered butchers and we've covered bribes. Again, the butcher shows you the kind of democracy that they're trying to protect. The bribes show you how far they are willing to go to advance those interests behind the scenes to where you don't see it. And now we're going to get into bluffs, butchers, bribes, and bluffs. And that's where it's going to all come together for you here. Because what the bluff does is show you what they are willing to do if they are not willing to back you down through financial means. Most people can be bought. You and I have a price. Don't think for a second that you don't have a price. Mine may be prohibitively high, but I do have a price. I do have a point at which I can be bought out of anything but submitting to the mark. Okay? Because that's a divorce from Christ, and I'm not about to take it there. But any earthly thing, there is a price. There is a price at which people will break. You like to think that and not even necessarily a price, but a price in a set of circumstances at which people will break. Everybody's got one. Most are, in my circle at least, are prohibitively high. If they cannot back you down with a bribe and they cannot use legal tactics against you to squeeze you out, if the power of the media no longer holds, because it used to be you could destroy someone in the media. Back in the day, before gay became fashionable, that was the thing. He's a homosexual. You can't take his word for anything. Right? Remember David Ferry? If you're familiar with the JFK case, you should be familiar with David Ferry. That is why they said that David Ferry couldn't have been a CIA asset, because he was vulnerable to blackmail because of his homosexuality, as was Clay Shaw. It's another rabbit hole for another day. They could destroy you in the media. Now people don't have confidence in the media anymore. So they try to buy you out. Because one thing they've got plenty of is money and power. One of the things that they tried to bribe Kerry Lake with, not even money. We're going to give you a no-show job somewhere. You know, like Hunter had with Burisma. We're going to give you a no-show job somewhere. We don't even want you to drop out. We don't even want you to drop out. We just want you to take a break for a couple of years. They know how to sway people. But if the swaying doesn't work, that's where we get into bluffs, because that's where we're at right now in the state of Texas. Governor Abbott could not be destroyed through the press, because anything they were going to do to excoriate that man, they've already done, right? He's a horrible person. He's a racist. He's a this thing. He's a that thing. He's a MAGA Republican right wing. You know, no, dude, he's a cripple in a wheelchair trying to do what he feels like is right on principle. And just as fallible as any other politician. Me and Abbott would probably not be pals. The stuff that I had to say about him during the pandemic when he reinstituted mask mandates and drug his ass on the lockdowns, I did not have good things to say about Greg Abbott. There are plenty of his policies with which I vehemently disagree. This is one where he happened to get it right. They couldn't destroy him with the press. They tried to destroy him through a legal framework. Well, we went to the Supreme Court and they said, you have to do it. Nah, 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 nah. Like the petulant 7-year-olds that they are. Abbott said no. He doubled down because he recognizes the reality of it. This is the strength of the bluff. If they won't fall for the bribe, they'll be cowed into submission with the bluff. And for a long time, that worked too. Look at all the things that the deep state and the power structure and this regime in particular has in its favor, working for it. If you don't shut up, we'll weaponize the Department of Justice against you. We'll put you in prison. No one's afraid of that anymore because people are willing to stand on principle. Well, okay, that's fine. We'll just buy you out. If we give you this massive amount of money, maybe you'll go away. Well, maybe they don't. We'll destroy you in the press. We'll make the whole country believe you're a crazy Nazi right-wing extremist. Okay. So now what do? You bluff them again with heavy consequences, and they don't buckle. Not only do they not buckle, but 25 other states join them. Let me be abundantly clear. This is not, in my opinion, this is not going to be the flashpoint for the Civil War. Let me be abundantly clear one more time for those of you that missed it the first dozen times that I went over this. If you are one of those people that is chomping at the bit of let's get the shooting started, you should probably tune me out right now. Because you and I have nothing in common. I will not shirk from the conflict if it comes, nor should you. But it is not something that any sane human being would want. Thankfully, I do not feel like, hey sis, I love you. I do not feel like this is going to be the flashpoint. Don't get your hopes up. If you are one of those Hawaiian shirt wearing boogaloo boys and you think this is where it kicks off, it's not. It may have been if Texas was standing alone. But 25 states got behind Greg Abbott. 25 states. How many in the union? 50. Half the states jumped behind Greg Abbott. Do you really think the regime is ready to take that on? Ponder what would be required. The National Guard units are under control of the state's governors. Texas, independent of its National Guard units, has its own state guard, as do many other states. In order to quell this rebellion, in order to crush the resistance, they would have to federalize those troops. Now, they did that in Alabama. You remember when they were introducing the black students into segregated schools, they federalized the National Guard units, had them walk in. You were talking about federalizing all of the National Guard units in the state of Texas? Probably not going to work out for you, Sparky. And even if it did, you'd have to federalize the National Guard units of 25 other states. Do you really think that they are going to step up to that mantle right now? You really think that they have the confidence? You really think that with that cadaver in the White House, they are going to find the spine and the nuts to pull that off? Now, your retort, and I will be here for it, is what I just said. Don't rule anything out. And I stand by that. What I'm telling you is that in my heart of hearts, I do not believe they're going to make that move at this time. Because they have everything to lose. And when I say they have nothing to gain, I mean that in the sense of they will gain nothing. They will lose horribly and decisively and abhorrently and grievously and violently. Again, this is not something that any sane person would pray for. They're not going to do it. They'll puff up with a whole lot of bluster, and they will use it. And the 25 state governors that got behind Texas, here's the strategy. Here's what is about to happen. Mark my words, and if I'm wrong, well, hey, man, I buy coffee. They're going to say that all of the Republican Party are right-wing, MAGA, anti-government extremists because they have the audacity to take a stand against King Joe. How dare you stand against the power of the federal government? Why, you're no different than the South in the days of the Civil War. I want to go on that rant, but I'm going to spare you. Point is this, it's not going to happen. It will not. We've covered the butcher, and the butcher was representative of the kind of democracy that they're out to protect. The bribe is what they will do when people don't back down from the bluff. So now they're asked out. They're completely out of options. This is why I say roll out nothing. They are desperate. They know that they cannot win through any constitutional means. They cannot defeat Trump in a general election. Yeah, but they cheat like they did in 2020. Okay, let's just concede for a minute that they did cheat in 2020, and I believe that they did. But let's just concede that they did. Look at how tight the margins were, and look at what was necessary just to get them that close to the margin. You had a national pandemic. You had universal unchecked mail-in voting in damn near every state of the union. Nobody was checking signatures. Nobody was counting ballots. Nobody was auditing the machines. All of this in the midst of a national pandemic. They can't pull that off twice in a row. Will they try? Absolutely they will. But the numbers, if you look at it, the numbers are too freaking massive. No one is going to believe it twice in a row. If you're looking for a flashpoint for the violence, that's when it comes. Not here in Texas and not over the border. If you're looking for a flashpoint for violence, they'll wait around until November and hand the election to that cadaver and his handlers. Or to Big Mike, or to Gavin Newsom, or whoever steps in at the last minute. Because Biden will not be the president. But again, that's a rant for another time. Butchers, bribes, and bluffs. Let's get into countdown, shall we? The doomsday clock. guys familiar with it? And you guys Cold War lunatics like I am? Love that history of the 50 years that we spent, like the 50 years that we spent with Russia, back when Russia was legitimately a menace and not a boogeyman that they throw up every time to say that the election was stolen or that Trump is a puppet. Back when Russia was seriously a menace. And we stood for 50 years, us and the Russians, like two kids in a bathtub full of gasoline. One of us had 6 matches. The other one only had 4. Both of us had more than enough to blow up the place, but neither one of them was going to feel secure unless they had more matches. That's the Cold War in a nutshell. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, back in the early days of the Cold War, in the 1950s, early 60s, started a thing they called the Doomsday Clock. They started out, I believe, 15 minutes to midnight. And depending on international tensions, they moved it closer or farther away from midnight. Midnight, of course, is the big show where we all go up in a thermonuclear fireball. But depending on the politics of that era, they would move the hand on the Doomsday Clock closer or further away from midnight. During Trump's first term, I just say it like that because I believe there will be a second. During Trump's first term, they moved it up to 2 minutes to midnight, which is the closest it had ever been. And everyone lost their minds, and the media wouldn't stop talking about it. This, despite the fact that he kept, sis, I love you. I love you so much. Wolverines! This, despite the fact that not only did he not start any new wars, but he was pulling us out of old ones. But because he said that little Kim would face fire and fury if he threatened us, because he actually took a stand and let his nuts drop and found his spine, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, famously liberal, every last one of them, moved the clock up to 2 minutes to midnight. And the press wouldn't shut up about it. Do you know what happened this week? Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, because of what is going on in Ukraine, moved the doomsday clock to 90 seconds. Minute and a half from midnight. Literally the closest it has ever been in the history of the doomsday clock. Now, in the final analysis, the doomsday clock means nothing. Okay? It's what a bunch of liberal scientists say and reflect about what's going on in the world politically and militarily. It really doesn't mean anything. But as a symbol, they love to trot it out when it makes conservatives look bad. When it made Reagan look bad, they wouldn't stop talking about it. When it made Trump look bad, they wouldn't stop talking about it. Have you heard anything before I said something about it moving to 90 seconds under Biden? I'm betting no. But it is the most realistic assessment they've had in years and years and years. Because now we've got active threats of in-theater use of tactical weapons, and we've got those threats from both sides. And the RAND Corporation and the Joint Chiefs are doing simulations of direct involvement in what is now a proxy war, because the American people have had enough, and they're not going to give that cokehead Zelensky any more money or any more weapons. What did I say at the beginning of the program? Rule out nothing. We are through the looking glass. We have crossed the Rubicon. Pick your cliche of we are on the other side of reason. So watch what's going on. Pay very, very close attention to it. And if you don't already have your home squared away, square it away. Beans, bullets, and Band-Aids, baby. And I will help you out. I will help you out in any way that I can. You guys can reach me personal message. You guys can reach me via email. I will do anything that I can to help. Right now, we're just analyzing. That's for the countdowns. And we are counting down to November. And in the countdown to November, again, just reinforcing. Rule out nothing. Rule out nothing. What's that? I think the end is coming soon. The Lions look to be going to the Super Bowl. George, I think that is a distinct possibility. That could be a harbinger of the end times. Here's the closer we get to November, the faster things are going to change, which is why I say square your ass away. Get your house in order. Because literally, we may have a week before something major kicks off. We may have until November before something major kicks off. November may come and go with nothing kicking off. But in my analysis, that's where we are. That's where we are. And these are the things that we need to take into account. Those countdowns. Let's talk coincidences, though. Coincidences. Sometimes it's not as easy, and this is more like just a one-off story that I want to share with you guys. Taking you back to the 80s for a minute. January of 1982, Breckenridge, Colorado. A sheriff's deputy was on a commercial flight. Sheriff's deputy was on a commercial flight. They were coming in for a landing at Breckenridge, Colorado, and he just happened to be looking out the window, and he saw something out in the tree line that caught his attention. It caught his attention because it shouldn't have been there. Lights in a tree line in an area that wasn't populated, right? And they were blinking. That's the other thing that made it look unnatural, because nature doesn't have that clockwork kind of rhythm. Nature doesn't do straight lines. Those lights were out there and they were blinking. Pink, 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 pink. They were blinking in Morse code. What they were blinking was an SOS. And that sheriff just happened to be looking out the window. Just happened to be looking out the window at that moment. He saw those headlights blinking SOS. Blink, 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 blink. And he alerted the pilot, and the pilot called down to rescue crews on the ground. And the rescue crews went out, and because one man happened to be looking out the window at the right time, that man's life was saved. The man's name was Alan Lee Phillips. His truck had gotten stuck in that snowstorm. He was buried. The temperatures that night dropped down to 20 degrees below zero. If the sheriff had not seen his lights flashing, he would have died. He would have died in that snowstorm. Divine providence? Maybe. He would have died. Right out there in the snow, he would have frozen to death. Fast forward a few years. Breckenridge, Colorado. A fellow by the name of Jeff Oberholzer. See, back in January of 82, Jeff Oberholzer had been taken into custody because his wife and his wife's friend had gone missing. He was the prime suspect. That should tell you a little something about marriage, that any time a spouse is killed, the spouse is the first person that they look to as a suspect. That should tell you a little something about marriage, but I digress. Oberholzer got taken into custody. The bodies went missing. Bodies were missing for a long time, and eventually they found the body of his wife, and he was the prime suspect, but they could not tie him to it. They could not tie him to it. They could not tie him to it. And they still couldn't find the body of his wife's friend. Now later, they found the body of his wife's friend, and the only thing connecting the two was a pair of orange socks They were found months apart and in different locations. Both of them had been shot in the head. The only thing connecting the two bodies was a pair of orange socks. They checked those orange socks. They checked for some blood stains that didn't belong to the victims. Long story short, they tied it all together, and they figured out that these two women who had been found in two different places, both shot in the head, had been killed by the same man. And then they started digging around the location of where those bodies were found. And they started putting together the timetable. Because no one should have been out in those woods at the time those women were killed. Do you see where this is going? As it turns out, Alan Lee Phillips, the guy whose headlights had saved him because one deputy sheriff happened to be looking out the window at the right time. It turns out Alan Lee Phillips was the killer. The reason he was out there in that snowstorm, the reason his truck had gotten bogged down and buried, the reason he would have frozen to death had it not been for that sheriff's deputy looking out the window at the right time, was because he had killed both of those women and was out there dumping the bodies. Took him almost 20 years. I got an exact date. How long did it take him? How long? Almost 40 years. Almost 40 years that this guy who had killed two women walked around free. Walked around free and unencumbered. Free man walking around the world. Two bodies on him. Who knows how many he could have racked up in the meantime that he wasn't even being investigated for. All because of that quirk of circumstances. All because of that quirk of circumstances. That he happened to be out there in that wilderness. Happened to be spotted. He could have gotten off scot-free. Or he could have died the night of. It's pretty wild, huh? The coincidences involved to get it to that point. Right place, right time, right guy looking out the right window at the right time, happens to see some headlights flashing. And 40 years later, people are able to put two and two together and solve a tragic murder. Another little side note on that. The husband, Mr. Oerlitzer, who was, Oberholzer, who was initially the suspect in the killing of his wife. Yeah. When they found Phillips, he had a mark, a really distinctive mark on the side of his face. And he said he had gotten that when he slid off the road, that he, bounced off the sheet metal in the car, whatever. Turns out that mark matched up perfectly with a keychain that Mr. Oberholzer had given his wife to defend herself if she was ever attacked. As Alan Lee Phillips was putting her in the position to put a bullet in her head, she was fighting with everything in her. And they didn't figure that out for 40 years either. Why do you share that? Because it's a cool story? Oh, it's definitely a cool story. The reason I'm sharing it is because I don't believe in karma. One of my favorite films, a film called Way of the Gun, James Caan plays a fellow by the name of Joe Sarno, and they ask him, do you believe in karma, Joe? And he shakes his head. Says, karma is just justice without the satisfaction. I don't believe in justice. I feel like that a lot. But one thing that I do feel like deep down in my heart of hearts is a sense of a divine plan. Which is why, for all the things that I bring to your attention, I don't ever want to come off like I'm telling you, you need to black pill yourself and give up. I want this to be an affirmation. I want this to be an affirmation that you are not out of the fight. I want this to be an affirmation that you're still in it as long as you believe that you're still in it. Because I do believe that there is a divine plan. Maybe you don't share the faith. Maybe you're a completely secular person and you feel like, maybe you even believe in karma and you're not of the faith. You believe that what comes around goes around, whatever it is that gets you there. But I do believe in a divine plan. Sooner or later, you're going to trip yourself up. I posted something on my personal page and my fan page this week. Sometimes this is what a guardian angel looks like. And it's a guy, it came from a television commercial from Finland. And it's a guy, he's just walking through the street and he like bumps into one person and shoves them out of the way. And they turn around and they look like, dude, what the hell? And immediately a car goes crashing into a floral arrangement behind them, One kid is running out to get a soccer ball, and this asshole of a guy puts his foot out in front of the kid, trips him, kid falls on his face, skins his forehead up a little bit. But guess what happened to that soccer ball? 2 seconds later, a car comes plowing through and would have smashed that kid. What I'm saying is I am a man of faith, and I believe that there is a divine plan. And sometimes that divine plan is manifested through human agents, and sometimes it's manifested through what we call coincidence, and sometimes it's manifested through divine intervention, however you want to do it. But I do believe that there is a divine plan. And I do believe that all these people are going to face something, whether it's at my hand or whether it's the hand of God. And if you were a secular person, you don't believe the hand of God is going to drop on them, maybe it's going to be karma, maybe it's going to be coincidence, maybe it's going to be something, but sooner or later. I do believe that evil men walk between the raindrops. I believe that because, back to the Orwell quote, I can't deny the evidence of my own eyes and ears. I believe that a lot of evil men walk between the raindrops, but sooner or later, there is a day of reckoning. Sometimes we may be called on to deliver that reckoning. That's between you and the boss man. That's between you and the carpenter kid. But me, I believe in a divine plan. And the best that I can do is try to find my place within it. I'm going to drop one more thing on you, and then we're going to get into the new hashtags and some of the old hashtags. I want to drop this on you too, man. You guys saw this in the header, LeMans. This is what we're up against. You know what? I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that for the very end. Let me give you the new hashtag first. I want to go through this really quick. I want to go over the old hashtags for those of you guys who have just showed up, and you guys know the one, and it's roughly in chronological order as we've come along and we've introduced these, but feel free to use them, guys. First of all, we all know this one, hashtag truthcock. Truthcock. You will accept the truthcock, or you will choke on the truthcock, or you will get with the truthcock. Prison style, no spit, no mercy. What does truthcock signify? Truthcock signifies something that is so righteously truthful that it is undeniable and irresistible and right there in your face like a big turgid cock of death that will not be ignored. So much truth, so hard and so fast that you're going to choke on it. And the people who have a problem swallowing that truth cock, the ones who always choke on it, are what? The grazers. That is a proper noun, by the way, and it should be capitalized. Grazer. Hashtag grazer. What is a grazer? A grazer is a person who behaves like a herd animal. A grazer is a person who is incapable of critical thought, who has outsourced their thinking to that Maddow guy or that Matthews chick. A grazer is a person who goes along to get along with the herd. The herd feels this way. I'm going to feel this way. I'm going to take someone else's opinion and call it my own. What's an example of grazer mentality? Let me give you an example of grazer mentality. The example of grazer mentality is this. They understand that when we're talking about, say, the climate crisis, right? They can say, well, of course, the oil companies are going to say that climate doesn't exist because if they do it, they're going to lose billions of dollars. They got billions of dollars at stake. They got an interest in it. They're going to hire scientists that lie. while at the same time being incapable of seeing how governments all over the world who stand to make billions of dollars in tax revenue if these things are passed, oh, they certainly wouldn't lie about it. You follow me? Not very smart people. Easily led, stupid, fearful. Stasi Karen, what is a Stasi Karen? Stasi Karen is like a regular Karen, but she's going to be the kind of Karen that would turn you into the secret police the minute we have a legit secret police. I mean, the FBI is serving the purpose good enough for right now, but that Karen, right? The same one who reports you to the homeowners association for having a chair too tall, right, on your front porch, or because you didn't trim your hedges quite low enough, or the grass is getting a little too tall. She'll report you to the homeowners association now. When there is a secret police, believe me, if she's watching your Facebook post, she's going to be the one to post up on you. She's got no business of her own to mind, so she's going to mind yours. She's the perfect little secret policeman, although right now she doesn't have a secret police. But it's coming. Watch out for the Stasi Karen. Intellectual gymnastics, that is self-explanatory. Intellectual gymnastics is where the truth cock is right there in front of your face, and you are going to go through this series completely abandoning logic in favor of emotion, and sometimes not even emotion. You will create a narrative that requires yoga mats to stretch into that position, and you will call it rational. Intellectual gymnastics is self-explanatory, as is hate fact. Hate fact is something that is irrefutable, undeniable, backed by evidence, but you can't say it because it's hateful to a marginalized group of people. Here's a couple. 13% of the United States population is responsible for 50% of the homicides. Guess which 13%? I'd love to tell you, but I can't because it's a hate fact. Here's another hate fact. Out of that same 13%, 90% of violent crime is intra-racial, same on same. 90%. That's a fact, right? You are more likely to be killed by someone that looks like you. However, when the races of the perpetrator and the victim differ, it is black on white, literally 9 times out of 10. Technically 87 times out of 100, but you get the idea. We can't say those things because it's a hate fact. Most hate crimes against Asians are committed by African Americans. Can't say that, it's a hate fact. You can talk about it anytime a white guy beats up an Asian because that's a hate crime, but you can't speak a hate fact. Pollyanna, again, self-explanatory. Life is basically good. People are basically good. If we could just get the right set of people out of the way, like the Republicans and the billionaires, we could all live in a beautiful utopia, and it would all be peace pipes and dances, and we could all dance around with flowers in our hair, and everyone would accept everybody. These people, Pollyannas, are more capable of this sort of thing and ultimately wind up behaving like this sort of thing. You guys follow me? Grazer and Pollyanna is an overlapping demographic, and both of them are more than capable of intellectual gymnastics, while, oddly enough, being thoroughly incapable of critical thought, pattern recognition, or analysis of facts. Maggots! What is a maggot? Well, we can all... They are a writhing larval form of an insect that will grow up to eat feces and garbage. That's what they are in the natural kingdom. In the human kingdom, they're not very different. They demonstrate in the streets and burn cities for organizations like Antifa and BLM. They are writhing little creatures feeding off the carrion flesh of a dying society and doing their best to push that corpse over the edge and create more corpses for them to feed on. They are low-life, scumbag human beings, completely beneath contempt. Antifa, BLM, College kids wearing Che Guevara shirts. Maggots. 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 People who insist that we must remove people from the ballot by violent means if necessary to save democracy. Maggots. You guys follow me? Cool. Now we get to the last one, and this is going to be the new one. This is going to be the new one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. You guys have heard me for the past couple of weeks talk about everybody who is out there pissing on other people's candles, right? When you have people who are trying to lift people up, and I'm gonna give you a little true confession, because we are all guilty of this on some level. There are people at some point in our lives, we will hear about a person who is having a very, very positive impact in a large number of lives. But because that person's principles might force us to re-examine our own core beliefs and actually make some changes in our own lives, or at the very least, we no longer have justifications for continuing to be weak people. The old saying is, it is better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness. You guys are familiar with that. Better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness. You got a lot of guys out there who are out there lighting little candles, lighting their little candles. You got some guys who have gathered together a whole lot of those candles, or maybe they've got a very, very big candle, a very, very big candle with a lot of bright light, and they're trying to pass that light on to other people. Who comes to mind? Jordan Peterson. There's one. Jordan Peterson comes to mind. Positive impact in literally tens of thousands, at the least, probably more than that. Positive impact on literally tens of thousands of lives. He's out there lighting candles, man. And some of these lives that he's lighting candles for have been walking around in the darkness for a long, long time. Speaking as someone who has walked in that darkness, I respect that. Any of you who have walked through the darkness, you should respect that too. Elon Musk. Oh man, he's a billionaire, blah, blah, blah. He is out there doing his best. He created, first thing he did was change the whole way that internet commerce was done and payments were taken. That was the first thing that he did. Then he created an electric car company. No, man, he just took it over. Okay, fine. Assumed control over an electric car company when all of the big three were doing their best to kill the electric car. So much so that, remember, back in the day, there was actually a documentary about it. Who killed the electric car? I'll tell you who killed the electric car. The same big three who were thumping their chests about their EVs now. Go find the documentary if it hadn't been pulled from the shelves. Elon took the lead. Elon, through the Powerwall, and Solar City, his company putting panels on the roof, gave every single American household the ability to remove themselves from the power grid, crippling the utility companies that have consistently taken advantage of us for decades. And then, just to spite everyone, created a commercial space industry where none had previously existed to take our species interplanetary. Lighting candles, if you ask me. We leave Elon to the side. Let's just stick with guys like Jordan Peterson. Here's a guy that I doubted for a very, very long time until I saw a documentary about the man a couple of years ago called I Am Not Your Guru. A fellow by the name of Anthony Robbins. Tony Robbins. The motivational speaker with the perfect teeth. You guys know him. A lot of you guys may bristle at that right off the bat, but I'm going to tell you something as part of a true confession. I spent 3 days this week in an online seminar with Anthony Robbins. Yeah, I did that. Why? Because I wasn't going to piss on someone who was out there lighting candles. I wanted to see how this guy was out lighting candles. And you know what I found out? By having the humility to go, hey, man, maybe this guy knows something I don't. I got a hell of a lot out of that seminar. Hell of a lot out of that seminar. Extensive notes. Stuff that is going to make me reflect. Stuff that I am still processing going forward. Stuff that is going to assist me greatly in every evolution that comes after this. In the same way that reading 12 Rules of Life from Jordan Peterson did when I first got turned on to JBP. He's lighting candles. Now, you may not like the candle he's carrying. You may not like the light that he's bringing to other people, but he's at least out there lighting candles instead of cursing the darkness. Like him or don't. So that's what's going to lead me to the new hashtag. Because there are a subculture of people, and I've been lamenting them for the past couple of weeks, if you've noticed. It's over, man. Game over, man. Oh, what are you doing? Trying to improve your life, man. It's pointless, dude. What are you trying to... You're going to get out there and vote? Voting doesn't mean anything, man. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid, dude. Yeah, Jordan Peterson, yeah. He's a dumb person's idea of a smart person. In parentheses, I've never read shit that the man's written, but this is my way of excusing myself from having to actually read or analyze something. So we're going to introduce a new Reverend Bart hashtag for those who were previously, well, kind of maggots in a way. Just like Grazer and Pollyanna is an overlapping demographic. Maggot is an overlapping demographic with the new Reverend Bart hashtag. Rather than curse the darkness, some of us are out there lighting candles. Then there are people on the side who are running around, not even cursing the darkness, but pissing on other people's flames. The new Reverend Bart hashtag, boys and girls, candle pissers. Feel free to use that. Take it and run with it. Maybe it'll take off. Intellectual gymnastics took off. Stasi Karen took off. Some of the other ones haven't taken off so well, but I'm going to introduce this one. The new Reverend Bart hashtag. Hashtag candle pissers. When you see people out there who are trying seriously to elevate themselves, let alone bring light into other people's lives, and all these other useless individuals whose own lives are wreckage at best have nothing better to do than to down talk these people, they are candle pissers. Right there. Candle pissers. You do not have time for candle pissers in your life. There's one use of the hashtag. Somebody want to dog you out because you read a book that had a positive influence on you. And it doesn't have to be Robbins, and it doesn't have to be Peterson. It could be, man, take it old school, Leo Buscaglia. It could be anyone or anything. Or, get ready for this one, any faith. People trying to elevate themselves. Light some candles and elevate themselves. And somebody else just want to come around with the dicks out, waving around in the world, with the dicks out, just waving around in the wind, trying to put your fire out. You got no room for candle pissers in your life. You can tell them I said that. Or tell them straight from your lips. Candle pissers. You're trying to set goals. You're trying to meet goals. You're trying to actually accomplish something. You are trying to raise your station, elevate your station in the food chain. And they want to come around and dog you out because they don't dig the fact that you're going to church. They don't dig the fact that you're reading the Stoics. They don't dig the fact that you're posting from Jordan Peterson. They don't dig the fact that you're going to a seminar with Anthony Robbins. Look at you, man, just following, man. Another follower, man, out there with the shills and the grifters. Brother, I do not have room for candle pissers in my life. And therefore, watch what happens. I wave my hand and the candle pissers disappear. Do that for your life. Get some use out of the hashtag. Maybe you guys like it. Let me know in the comments. But I kind of dig it. I got sick of the candle pissers. I've been talking about this for the last 2 weeks. These guys out there just pissing on other people's candles. Look, bro, you want to stay in the darkness. and piss in the corner, I got no problem with that. It's your corner, dude. It's your corner. It's your life. You want to stay in the darkness and piss in your corner, you go right ahead and do it. But we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. Because this is where the world stands right now. And I'm going to control, and I'm going to close with this because it was in the header. And LeMans. You guys familiar with LeMans? This is LeMans. It's a 24-hour endurance race on the Grand Prix circuit. They run it once a year. Those cars run for 24 hours straight. Every major auto manufacturer has a car in the race. This is where all the developments get made. Just like with, just like war advances technology, right? Racing advances technology in the automotive world. 24-hour endurance race at Le Mans. In 1955, did you? Cool, man. Right on. Deacon Mark gets the hashtag. I'm glad, man. Get some use out of it. Get some use out of it. Screw these candle pissers, man. Here's where we're at in life, and I'm going to close here pretty quick. In 1955, during Le Mans endurance race, and here's the thing, you can change drivers, right? One guy will run for 8 hours, and they switch out drivers. There was a massive rivalry going in between Mercedes and Jaguar, right? Mercedes and Jaguar, for the sake of the metaphor, will represent very well-moneyed interests who are highly competitive with each other, or, say, big social interests, government interests who are highly competitive with each other. The race started, they went into it, and at some point in the race, a Mercedes car, one of the two Mercedes cars and one of the four Mercedes drivers, 4 to 6, smashed into a couple other cars, left the track. And that would have been enough. But what happened was, in the course of that accident, when it slammed into the wall in that back stretch, one of the axles came off that motor vehicle and sailed through the grandstands. You ever seen the axle and a differential on one of those cars? Long, heavy piece of steel, flying, spinning through into the grandstands. Over 80 people were killed. Over 80 people were killed by that flying axle. Most of them decapitated, torn in half, shredded. You know what spinning, moving metal does to a human body? Now imagine a spinning metal axle plunging through a grandstand full of spectators at a Grand Prix race. Here's the best part. Here's the best part. They didn't stop the race. They didn't stop the race. The race continued. That's right, the race continued. Not only did the race continue, but the Mercedes team was so hell-bent for leather that they were going to beat Jaguar, that the guy in charge doubled down on one of his drivers and actually physically assaulted him when he bucked and didn't want to get back into the car as a replacement driver. It continued. Why do I say all that? Because that's where we are as a civilization right now. That's where we are as a civilization right now. The people in the grandstands are the grazers. And grazers are generally useless as far as thinking goes, but there are millions of them, and they are necessary to making things work. They are the ones who sling the hash at the diner. They are the ones who deliver the newspapers. They are the ones who come and unclog your toilet. They are the ones who sack your groceries. They are the ones who drive the trucks a lot of times. Not an insult to truck drivers, because there are a lot of very sharp truck drivers out there, but you see where I'm going. They're the ones who make it go. These well-moneyed interests and the machines that they are driving are sending flying chunks of steel into the people in the grandstands, and people are being hurt and people are being killed, and no one cares because all of those powerful interests and all of their machines are in a competition with each other, and they barely know that we exist. These people don't care what happens to us deplorables. These people don't care what happens to regular human beings. Hell, man, I'm even part of the problem because I'm drawing a distinction between grazers and us. That shows a distinct lack of humility on my part, doesn't it? I heard it. I heard you. I heard you. The point is this. As I've said before, we are in a race between enlightenment and catastrophe, and it may take catastrophe to lead us to enlightenment. We're in the middle of that catastrophe right now. Now, I believe that on the other side is going to come enlightenment. I believe we all should be working to that end. But in the meantime and between time, we've got to look out for ourselves. We've got to look out for each other, and we've got to be aware of where the division lies. We don't have time for black pills, and we certainly don't have the luxury of entertaining candle pissers, because in spite of the machinations of the power brokers, in spite of all the horrible shit that is going on in the world, there is still a beauty underneath, and there are still people who are trying to elevate not just themselves, but the people around them, those that love them and those that they love. There are people who are trying to elevate our entire species. We need to get back to a point where we revere such men and take their flame and light somebody else's candle instead of cursing the darkness or pissing on somebody else's flame. That's what I want you all to aspire to, and that's where I'm headed. That's the mind that I'm on right now. Subject to change without notice. Move forward unapologetically and make no peace and hold no space open for the candle pissers in your life. Move forward with your own light and light somebody else's on the way out the door. I'm going to close with a prayer here, guys. Lord God, I appreciate the fellowship with all these people who continue to show up, for my bloviating ass week after week. I hope that you use me as a vessel. I hope that I can be a vessel for the Spirit to speak to one of these people, even just one, to maybe change their life in some small way, to maybe light that candle, to drop some wisdom, to get them to look at things in a different way. Maybe they're hurting, man. Maybe they're hurting, or they're just a little bit lost and they don't know. If anything that I can say, even in passing, can have an effect in their life to steer them in the right direction, to put them on the right path, or to re-examine the path that they're walking and put themselves on the right path, if it's going to bring them any closer to truth, then it brings them closer to you, and I'm all about that, Lord. And I pray that these efforts can be used to that end. For the sake of the fight coming up, Lord, clarity and discernment and strength and resolve to get through it. May we embrace each other as brothers. May we put our knuckles up, foreheads down, and go charging into the maelstrom. Omnia ad regnum, everything for the kingdom, Lord, everything for the kingdom. Deus vult. Pray these things in the name of the risen Christ. Amen and amen. Appreciate you guys being here, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to get on out of here, y'all. I love y'all. Thank you for being here. Again, maybe I'm really going to try to squeeze in a sermon next Sunday. And if I do, we're going to take a deep dive on propaganda and mind control. You guys are not going to want to miss that. For all you guys that showed up here for the first time, I hope I didn't bore you to tears. I hope I lived up to expectations. And maybe you guys will hit me up with a personal message, if you got some way that I could better address you. Anyway, appreciate you guys. We're going to go out like we always do with a little bit of Clutch, the best cover of Fortunate Son that's ever been done in the rock and roll universe. Neil Fallon and Clutch. You can disagree, but you would be wrong. I'm going to pass around a digital collection plate. You guys want to throw me some coin? That would be outstanding. I certainly wouldn't turn it down. I'm on Cash App. I'm on Facebook Pay. I'm on whatever, you name it. I'm on PayPal, I'm on all that good stuff, Zelle, yada, 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 whatever. But hey, man, tell you what, we're still in a Biden economy, reluctantly, for a little while longer. I understand if you can't, and that's totally cool. Here's what you can do. Help me out, man. Repost this stuff. Let them know there's a fat, toothless, crippled crane operator with some opinions that gets on and rants and raves. All of my reverends, rangers, my sinner sisters, my prophets of doom out there, spread the word, man. Repost the sermon. Tell them, all the kindred spirits and like minds, send them my way. Let's build that dialogue. Let's build that community. But here's what you can do, not just for me, but for yourselves. Like my buddy Stone says, live the three, baby. Live the three. What are the three? It's the three prime directives, man. The signal-to-noise ratio is all screwed up right now. You have got to be that signal that punches through the noise, man, all the fog of war, clearly communicating. You got to be that light that breaks through the darkness. They'll try to crush you with the darkness, demoralize you, dehumanize you, emasculate you with the darkness. You have got to be the light that carries through the darkness, and above and beyond everything else, the iron rule, and that is to be strength in a world full of weakness. When I'm talking about strength, I'm not just talking here. This is important, but here, and sometimes even here. Why is that the iron rule? Because without that strength, nothing else matters, man. If you don't have strength here, you're not going to be able to carry that signal through the noise, man. You won't be strong enough. You won't have the resolve and the resiliency to carry that light through the darkness if you don't have strength, man. So strength above all. A lot of that strength is here, but a lot of that strength for you men of faith, my brothers and sisters in Christ, there's a hell of a lot of strength there as well. Talk to the boss man and the carpenter kid. They will set you right. I give you my word, man. But in the meantime, work on that strength any way you got it. Because that's what's going to carry the signal through the noise. That's what's going to carry the light through the darkness. That strength and that fortitude. You guys are part of my strength. Keep showing up, man. I love y'all for that. Thank you for that. I appreciate every single one of y'all, man. Believe that in your heart of hearts. I appreciate every single one of y'all. And I hope I had something to offer you to honor you the way that you guys honored me. I'm the Reverend. That is the gospel. Appreciate y'all, man. We'll see you next Sunday. Peace. Love y'all, man. God bless. God bless. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.